From Somalia, let's now move to the world's youngest country, where a protest has been taking place in South Sudan's capital, Juba, today, against the African Union's plan to send peacekeepers to the country to end the conflict between troops loyal to President Salva Kiir and his rival Riek Machar. On Monday, the African Union approved additional peacekeepers to be added to the 12,000 force in the country. However, South Sudan has maintained that there is no need for additional peacekeeping soldiers, even with an increased spate of violence that has seen the deaths of hundreds. United Nations peacekeepers have been deployed in South Sudan since the country gained independence from Sudan in 2011. Since the fighting broke out on July the 8th, at least 5,000 internally displaced civilians have sought protection in the United Nations Tomping compound in Juba. Another 3,000 IDPs who arrived at the United Nations house premise have been relocated to the protection of civilians site nearby.
Go out, come in, go out, come in, enter.
Well, that situation in South Sudan brings us to our discussion right now, and joining me in the studio for Worldview is the chairman of the Federal Democratic Party of South Sudan, Gabriel Changson Chang. Many thanks for joining us, sir, in the studio and in the program. Glad to have you here. And one of the stories that we just read here is that currently there are protests in Juba over the AU's decision to send more peacekeeping troops. What do you think about this?
Well, in third world countries, that is normal. When there is external pressure, you tend to mobilize the local population to back whatever policy you want to pursue. So we are not surprised.
Are you saying that the government could have a hand in this, in the protests, probably, or the authorities?
Well, I think it was orchestrated by the authority and told the population to go and protest against the IGAD forces that are intended to go and help the country and the people of South Sudan.
Why would the government want to do this?
Well, because you know always status quo is maintained by those who are in power, in spite of the fact that people are dying like birds or like flies. It's unfortunate that the government should take that action, because the simple question you ask is that where is the first vice president? The first vice president has been forced out from the country because of clashes you mentioned before. And those clashes are unheard of, because you cannot imagine while the presidency, that is the president, the first vice president, and the vice president were meeting in the palace, their bodyguards were slaying themselves. And then you pretend to say that there is no problem and we can sort it out. How do you sort it out?
Mr. Chang, you're a chairman of one of the parties in South Sudan, and you're making, of course, very grave allegations against those in authority that they might have been the ones who orchestrated the protests that we are witnessing in Juba. But as the chairman of the Federal Democratic Party of South Sudan, do you think there is need for South Sudan or the AU to send more troops, more peacekeeping troops into the country?
Well, I think we were the first to propose the intervention force. We are saying that IGAD, as a regional force, should send IGAD forces to go and contain the grave situation in South Sudan, to save lives and to help the country from degenerating into chaos and to a failed state. That the regional intervention is not new. in Africa. You mentioned the troops that are in Somalia now, and also, importantly, in West Africa, when Liberia and Sierra Leone were in problems, the ECOWAS, the West African forces, intervened, formed a new government, and now those countries have recovered from the lawlessness and unwarranted killing they were involved in.
Yeah.
So if the leaders of South Sudan have the South and its people at heart, the best way is that if we cannot understand ourselves as South Sudanese political forces, then somebody, a neighbor, should come and help us. And that's why we propose this force even before the IGAD Plus and partners, because we know that the marriage between the president and the first vice president was imposed on them. They don't have confidence in themselves, but the region and the partners imposed that solution, which we first also objected to, that there will be no reconciliation. The two, given the mistrust between them, they cannot reconcile the country. And South Sudan is full of human resources, well-educated, well-experienced. They can also lead the country to safe shores.
Well, fighting broke out during Independence Day in South Sudan, and the world has had its eyes on South Sudan for quite a while now, not only since July the 8th, but since 2011. Could you just kindly paint a picture for us? What exactly is the situation on the ground?
Well, before I even talk about what is happening on the ground, I have to mention that the IGAD brokered peace agreement that is being implemented and has its own difficulty in implementation, was an agreement between the three SPLM factions, one party differing with itself, divided itself into three. When that peace agreement was brokered, it didn't pay any attention to the rest of the South.
Yes, and we're definitely coming to that, because I know you've had problems with how IGAD has been handling this.
So now the situation on the ground, we are hearing, as you also hear, there is a lull, but the first vice president is at large, and we don't know whether he will be pursued wherever he is by the government forces or not. But if you go to Juba, even today, some bodies were recovered. The killing is still going on, from door to door. Or this was an opportunity to also crack down on those who were seen as members of dissent. So the situation, even though there is no fighting in Juba, and in some areas, it's very tense. It's not safe.
So back to what you were saying, it's not the first time that we've seen your party criticize IGAD and on how it has been brokering peace deals between the parties and the SPLM factions. As you say, you've had a problem with how IGAD has been conducting itself. Do you think this is a part of the problem that is ailing South Sudan, not including all the parties involved and stakeholders?
Yes, I think what we were trying to do from the very beginning, even before the agreement was signed, we were pointing out the weak points of what would be the agreement. And but unfortunately, the mediation process did not take any measures to rectify it.
What were these weak points?
Well, the weak points were that you cannot, in Arusha 2015, on 21st of January, there was an SPLM reunification declaration, which they call Arusha Declaration. That one, we don't have any problem for SPLM as a party to reconcile. But that reconciliation should not be translated into reconciliation of all South Sudanese forces. No, because SPLM is a party. We have other 17 to 19 political parties in South Sudan. Now what happened was that that declaration was translated in Addis Ababa and Juba to what is now agreement on South Sudan, which means when you come to power sharing ratios, 93% were allocated to the three factions of SPLM.
Is this where the problem lies?
No, that is, yes, because now what is happening in Juba, it is the SPLM government fighting itself. But the region will say South Sudanese have failed to rule themselves when they did it intentionally to give back power to SPLM. In the first place, in 2005, a similar mistake was done by the same IGAD, the Comprehensive Peace Agreement. Almost absolute power, 70%, was given to the SPLM, in military and as well as in political arena. What happened? They brought the country to its needs in 2013. The war that was fought was an SPLM war, power struggle within the one-party system.
Well, Mr.
We said IGAD should have learned and should have benefited from that experience when we brokered the 2015 agreement. Then for SPLM factions to have to share government with others, then the ratios should not be in that 7 to 93%.
So what are we saying here? Is the problem bigger than the authorities? Is the problem bigger than the leadership in South Sudan? And what would be the solutions to just put an end to the conversation of war and crisis in South Sudan once and for all?
Yes, the problem in the first place to many of us is a leadership failure in this house. And when you talk of leadership failure, it is the SPLM leadership, because they are the ones fighting among themselves. If they were to have peace within themselves, then the country will now be in peace. So what we are saying now is that now that the SPLM factions do not see eye to eye, the vice president is at large. To us, even if he goes back to Juba, the fence will not be mended so that they go. We are saying that what took place in West Africa to restore stability in those countries can also be done by IGAD. Instead of IGAD sending only few forces without any mandate, we are saying that the IGAD forces should be fully mandated to restore stability in South Sudan, to oversee the formation of an all-inclusive government where all South Sudanese will take part, and also to oversee the restructuring of the security sector institutions, because that is where the problem lies.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm afraid we'll have to end there. We do not have too much time. We would have had a longer conversation, but thank you very much for coming in. That is the chairman of the Federal Democratic Party in South Sudan, one of the parties in South Sudan, Gabriel Changson Chen, saying probably the only one solution towards the stalemate in South Sudan would be an all-inclusive conversation to restructure the government holistically. Many thanks for coming in.
Failure to do that, it means that the IGAD has given the green light to all South Sudanese forces to fight among themselves.
All right. We'll end on that note. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.